This is the whole documentary about Jenny, the girl who been sequestrated by her dad, like my daughters. See the documentary.
I could tell, as all of us could, just looking at her, that there was a lot to Jeannie, and that what we had to do was to make sure we gave her opportunities to express, find a way to take what was latent and express it, or somehow then, acquire it, because the potential just seemed so great.
And the scars on his body indicated he had been in the wild for most of his life. Victor's story intrigued historian and psychologist Harlan Lane. Around the time doctors in Los Angeles were following Jeannie's case, Lane was in France, tracking Victor's story.
Shortly after the boy was captured, a biology professor took a very careful look at him, named a bonus.
Society and culture. This was a situation no one would set out to create on purpose. It was therefore referred to as the forbidden experiment. Scientists in Paris quickly summoned Victor from the south of France. Although Victor could hear, they brought him to this school, the National Institute for the Deaf.
Okay, we're at the National Institute for the Deaf, and it happened right here. The gardener from Rodez brings the wild boy right through here, into the courtyard, and I guess they were expected, and the director, the Abbé Sicard, comes out, and, come on, they would meet about here. Sicard comes out, and what does he see? Not a nice little bourgeois deaf kid in the school uniform, his new pupil, but a raging, spitting, snarling, filthy savage. Defecating where he is, urinating where he is. Long hair, wadded, yellow teeth, long fingernails. A savage. Sicard never seen anything like that in his life. So he backs off. What's he gonna do? Idea. He's just hired a young physician from the military hospital up the street, a fellow by the name of Jean-Marc Itard. So he calls, Itard, Itard.
Jean-Marc Itard was a 26-year-old medical student who was ready to make his mark. Itard's ambitions would pay off. Not only would people in the 20th century still be discussing him, but the famous French director Francois Truffaut would play Itard in a movie about the case. The movie illustrates the risk Itard took. More experienced doctors concluded Victor was profoundly retarded from birth and unable to learn. Itard, though, believed that Victor had become retarded because of his years of living in the wild. He believed he could civilize Victor. Itard's diary of his work with Victor makes this one of the most documented cases of wild children throughout history. In fact, the diary served as the basis for Truffaut's movie called The Wild Child. One of the strangest chapters of this story is the timing of the premiere. For Truffaut's movie about history's most famous wild child opened exactly 1 week after Jeannie was discovered.
She would persist until she at least got a new word.
While Curtis tracked Jeannie's speech, James Kent continued work on her emotional development. Kent was concerned that with the growing number of people involved in her case, Jeannie wouldn't be able to form single, dependable relationships. So he set out to be her surrogate parent. Institute for the Deaf, Jeannie's historic counterpart also seemed to flourish when reunited with civilization. As shown in Truffaut's movie, Victor responded successfully to methods used to teach the deaf. Victor's teacher created his own methods as well. Itard used cut-out letters for lessons that are still used in kindergartens all over the world. He had a knack for gradually increasing the complexity of Victor's tasks.
Attention, Victor. Livre, ciseaux, cadre.
Itard is teaching Victor to read simple phrases like to throw a key. So he writes throw key in French and then flings a key, then expects Victor to do the same. Victor's doing well. He's reading the sentences, performing the actions, but Itard doesn't trust it. It could be by sheer memory. He's seen Itard do it. So he decides to scramble the nouns and verbs and get some weird combinations like to tear a stone, to cut a cup, to eat a broom. Presents tear a stone to Victor, and he shows some ingenuity. He goes off, he gets a hammer, and he smashes the stone. Cut a cup, picks up the cup and hurls it on the floor, and it shatters. Eat a broom. This time he changes the noun, goes off and gets a piece of bread and devours it. This was Itard, constantly analyzing, upping the ante, pushing the kid towards civilization, toward the skills that we have. And Victor generally rising to the challenge, each time taking the small step. This was the kind of struggle they engaged in together for 6 years. People have asked me, well, what do you think of the Truffaut film, The Wild Child, L'Enfant Sauvage? And what I think of it was that it was a pretty solid job of following Itard's reports.
Emmenez-le sur posé.
But I do have one exception, and that is at the end of the film, the child climbs the stairs when the idea is that he's walking off into a future of endless power, and that's simply false.
In reality, the history books show that Victor's progress slowed down. Itard reported while Victor knew how to read simple words, he never really learned how to talk. Itard recommended that the forbidden experiment be stopped.
You know, well, we attributed to Itard this motive of wanting to use Victor to build his own career, and I think that was true. When the point came that he was no longer serving Victor, nor serving science, he was no longer serving his career, he abandoned him, he let him go. Itard gave up. He asked Madame Guérin, the housekeeper, to take the boy in down the street from the deaf school. And there they lived, a rather gray, sad, forlorn existence, the two of them. So the story is not as romantic as Truffaut would have us believe.
Victor lived his last days at this very spot in Paris. He died in his 40s in 1828. Victor's story did not end well. In Los Angeles, more than a century later, Jeannie's caregivers were working to ensure that their pupil fared better.
I don't think they started out with the notion of let's exploit her for all the money we can get. I think maybe everybody started out with the notion, one, they wanted to help her, but two, this was like the biggest thing that had hit town in quite a number of years. It was right on the heels of Truffaut's movie, The Wild Child, hence the name that was given to her. I mean, when they had seminars at Children's Hospital, they showed the movie as part of the seminar. And so, I mean, this was like a worldwide attraction, so I think it was really easy to get sidetracked.
There's an ethical dilemma in this kind of research. If you want to do rigorous science, then Jeannie's interests are going to come second some of the time. If you only care about helping Jeannie, then you wouldn't do a lot of this scientific research. So what are you going to do? To make matters worse, the two roles, scientist and therapist, were combined in one person in her case. So I think future generations are going to study Jeannie's case as we've been studying Victor's, not only for what it can teach us about human development, but also for what it can teach us about the rewards and the risks of conducting the forbidden experiment.
A production